say to you that it's time for us to become a stronger and a more reliable ally of the United States and our friends in the Western Alliance. If this means giving our friends the benefit of the doubt from time to time, so be it. I'm going to do it.
True to his campaign promise, Brian Mulroney has come to visit President Ronald Reagan a week after he was sworn in as Prime Minister of Canada. The two leaders want the public to see them together as friends, so the press has been invited to the White House.
Well, we're going to have to move to the side because we've got crews coming out. Move this way.
For the American journalists, this is just another routine assignment, the state visit of yet another foreign leader. Their story will be reported on the back pages of the newspapers and perhaps make a 20-second spot on the television news if it's not preempted by a disaster somewhere.
All between friends,
For the Canadian press, this is the day's major story.
Issue with U.S. policies, and the feeling here is that he could well become the most pro-American Prime Minister that Canada has ever had. David Halton, CBC News, Washington.
Very nice.
Ronald Reagan would like everyone to be pro-American. He has come to power by promising that he will restore his nation to its rightful place as the world's supreme economic and military power.
He was here this past
A firm alliance with Canada is crucial to his aim, so he's doing his best to make the new Prime Minister feel right at home.
Important economic partner and great friend. I congratulated Prime Minister Mulroney on winning a decisive and historical electoral mandate from the people of Canada. As the other North American Irishman, I also wished him well in his new responsibilities. We too intend to give our neighbor the benefit of the doubt. So I thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for coming here today. And once again, congratulations on your decisive victory and à la prochaine.
To become Prime Minister of Canada, you have to have been friendly to the United States. But once you stay in office for a long period of time, and you've served as a kind of intermediary between the power here and the folks back home in Canada, your attitude to the United States may change. You may begin to realize that this is a very difficult relationship for you to manage. How do we protect our political and economic interests as a people while living next door to the most powerful nation in the world?
Living next to you is in some ways like sleeping with an elephant. No matter how friendly or even tempered is the beast, if I can call it that, one is affected by every twitch and grunt.
Among those who contend that the United States is aggressive and seeks territorial advantage and foments war, Canada would not have maintained its existence as an independent nation.
We are so accustomed to the undefended boundary, 3,000 miles long.
The United States is particularly gratified to find Canada at our side.
The gift of Providence that we really cherish is that we were given as our neighbors, the people and the nation of Canada.
No finer example could be given to the world than that which has been developed between the United States and Canada over the years.
Geography has made us neighbors. History has made us friends. Economics has made us partners. And necessity has made us allies. Those whom nature has so joined together, let no man put asunder.
You know, with all that talk, all those cliches through all those years about the undefended border between Canada and the United States, it's hardly surprising that Canadians often forget that our relationship with the United States began with a series of wars. First there was the American Revolution, then along came the War of 1812. You know, when the Americans sing their national anthem with all those words about bombs bursting in air, they're singing about a battle between them and us. The Americans have always assumed that we would join them someday. When Thomas Jefferson and the Founding Fathers drew up their first Constitution in 1781, they put an article in it, Article 11, which said that Canada could join any time it wanted with no fuss or bother. When John A. Macdonald arrived in this town as the first Canadian Prime Minister to visit Washington, there were no bands to meet him. There was, in fact, nobody from the American government that came to meet him. John A. was not here in his official capacity as Prime Minister of Canada, but as part of a delegation of British commissioners who were attempting to settle the claims between Britain and the United States that arose out of the American Civil War. The president of the day was Ulysses S. Grant, the great hero of the victorious Northern armies. Grant demanded that Britain turn over Canada to the United States as compensation for the British sale of a ship to the Confederate rebels during the Civil War. In the custody battle that ensued, John A. managed to hang on to his infant country, and thereafter made it his policy to keep the Yankee on his own side of the fence. John A. called his method of protection the national policy. He claimed that his opponents in the Liberal Party, who were for an open border, simply wanted to sell out the country. The national policy rested on three government initiatives: build a railway to the Pacific, open up the West to immigrant settlers, and create a tariff wall around the country to block imports and encourage industries in central Canada. The settlers of the West and the people of the Maritimes would serve as the captive market for these factories, and they resented it. When industries are protected by tariffs, the conventional wisdom is that the industries are weak, inefficient, and uncreative. That's not always true, and it certainly was not the case with the industries that grew up around Brantford, Ontario, when Sir John A. implemented the national policy. Around me are the homes of the industrialists and businessmen of that period, and they were anything but weak and uncompetitive. These were innovative leaders whose companies won prizes at international exhibitions, and whose products sold in markets around the world. The national policy and the protected home market simply gave the Brantford businessmen a chance. Under the national policy, Canada prospered and joined the parade of industrialized nations. In the election of 1911, Liberal Prime Minister Sir Wilfrid Laurier, sympathizing with the West, said that Canada was a mature nation which now could compete with the United States without the benefit of protection. A few leading American politicians let it be known that they considered Laurier's free trade the first step toward the annexation of Canada. The voters panicked and soundly defeated the Liberals to the conservative rallying cry, "No trucker trade with Yankees." The issue of free trade was buried with Laurier, and no Canadian Prime Minister dared to raise it in public again for another 70 years. One of the mourners was Laurier's supporter and heir apparent, William Lyon Mackenzie King, a shrewd politician. He moved into Laurier's house and later became Prime Minister, and held that office for longer than anyone in history, in spite of the fact that few people really liked him. This is his study, his hideaway. In this room you see things that meant a lot to Mackenzie King. Here is a statue of a dog very much like his beloved Pat. And there is the crystal ball which tells us about his fascination with spiritualism. And yet Mackenzie King was a lot like the Canada of his period, with its gray exterior and its burning internal fires.
To trails end, and no matter where trails wend, trails end at the end of the day.
In the Hollywood movies of the times, Canada seemed to be populated by singing Mounties, comical French Canadians, and untrustworthy Indians.
You're making fun of me.
It was a good place for American crooks to hide out.
Well, it's the first time I've ever walked from the United States to Canada. You ought to be glad you're here.
As soon as you crossed the border, you were in the middle of a wilderness. A wilderness that was very attractive to a rapidly expanding America, looking for room to grow.
I like quiet and harmony. The hum of the bees and the whispering of the little wild things under the leaves.
Mackenzie King welcomed American interest. He said that Canada needed the United States as a counterweight to the influence of Imperial Britain. He was drawn to the power, the soaring energy of the American eagle. He had been an advisor to the richest man in the world, John D. Rockefeller. But the American who really fascinated King was Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
King liked to think he was very close to Roosevelt. He even dreamed about the president. When he went to Washington to introduce himself, he told Franklin Roosevelt about his dream in which Jesus indicated that the United States and Canada should stand together in spiritual brotherhood and set an example to the other nations of the world. Eleanor Roosevelt couldn't stand King, but the president, like a rich, benevolent uncle, took a liking to his eccentric country cousin. Roosevelt was genuinely fond of Canada and Canadians. He owned a summer home on Campobello Island in New Brunswick. His advisors told him that Canada was a potential economic rival of the United States, and it would serve him well to cultivate this friendship.
I say this, when I have been in Canada, I have never heard a Canadian refer to an American as a foreigner. He's just an American.
He flattered, and, he was a great and charming man. And he flattered the pants off Mackenzie King. And Mackenzie King was not a difficult man to flatter. King really thought that this was the wave of the future, and that you were building in the United States a great, plentiful social democracy.
In Europe, the fascists were pulling out the knives for a different kind of social experiment. As war approached, it was comforting for Canadians to have the architect of the New Deal as their neighbor.
I give to you assurance that the people of the United States will not stand idly by if domination of Canadian soil is threatened by any other empire.